Hey, welcome back to Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel. Thanks so much for joining me here on this road trip. So, I am sitting here embroidering some pillowcases and thought I would hop on and talk about something that I've been just giving a lot of thought here, especially recently. There was something that happened with a friend, and um, she's going through a grieving process right now. And I just thought I wanted to hop on and kind of give some of my thoughts just as a single lady about grieving and to kind of understand where I'm coming from. I think it's important that I talk a little bit about my backstory, and that is that I did go to college and then pursued a master's to get a degree in ministry, and I am not actively using it. And my life looks very, very different than what I pictured it looking when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. And even when I was 23 and moved to Kansas City to pursue my master's degree at a seminary, my life definitely does not look the way I thought it was going to look. In part because, I'm vocationally not doing what I went to school for in any shape of the imagination. I am still single. I've moved back home. A lot of my career goals have changed over the years. A lot of the things that I have experienced have really changed. My perception and my view of what I was taught on a few occasions. And a couple years ago, I was sent a reel off of Instagram by a friend. And as a part of that woman was talking about really specific towards singles, but about grieving the life that you thought you were going to have and having to come to grips with the fact that what you thought was going to be your life is not going to happen. And I think given some of what I've gone through in the last few years, like with career changes, moving, just accepting that my life looks very different from what I always thought it was going to look like, that I wanted to hop on and just share a little bit about that. Here with Road Tripping with Rachel, I do a lot of stuff having to, as we road trip through the Bible, life, and the road. This is just one of those life things where I think we don't talk about the grieving process outside of someone really passing away, but it is okay, in my opinion, to really go through the grieving process for what you thought life was going to look like. I'm 35, I'll turn 36 later on this year. I honestly thought when I was 20 years old that, I would be married by now with a couple of kids. Completely thought that. And, I think there's a lot of people who are in the same place I am currently right now, where we're millennials. We're basically career women at this point, who are working and pursuing our vocations. That some of us, yes, singleness is most definitely a choice, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being single. I mean, sure, would I like to find someone? Yeah, but am I dissatisfied being single? Not necessarily. There is definitely something to be said about it's my money and I get to spend it however I want. I can pursue my hobbies. I can pursue my likes and interests. There's something to be said about that. But there's also this process I've gone through over the probably more than 2 years. I've just been here for 2 years. Of accepting the fact that what I had always had my dreams and ambitions set on weren't going to be. And that's hard, especially when you saw the buildup of how God was opening a lot of doors and opening a lot of windows, and then suddenly they just get closed. That's very hard. It's hard emotionally, it's hard spiritually, it's hard mentally to deal with all of that. And especially when you're in an environment of where you have a lot of pressure to trying to think of how to say this. When you are in an environment with a lot of pressure that you need to grow wherever you're planted, and that's not wrong. But when someone has been planted somewhere and it's not where they ever wanted to be, nor where they thought they were going to be at all, we need to show some grace in the fact that like that person is having to deal with the upheaval of watching dreams and ambitions die. And I went through that a couple years ago now, of having to accept that the things that I always thought were going to be just weren't. And it's hard. And I don't think we talk about it enough. And when you have to watch those around you achieving the things that you have always wanted and had always dreamed about and had ambitions for, and like I said, it's also hard whenever you see where God had opened doors and had opened windows and had clearly been directing you, and seeing how so much has changed and how now those doors are closed. It's really hard. And giving someone pity encouragement is not appreciated. We'll put it that way. Like I said, I'm single. I'm in my mid-30s, and having someone come up and say, "Oh, like you'll meet someone." Sure, it might happen, it might not, but don't talk about it as though it's a definitive thing. Talk about it as though, like, yeah, you might still end up meeting someone. It's a possibility. I know it's a possibility. But don't talk about it as though it's definitive. Don't assume that my life is not fulfilling simply because I'm single. Don't assume that I don't have goals and ambitions because I'm single. Don't assume that I'm dissatisfied with life because life has taken me in a totally different direction than from where I thought I was going to be. And also, like, don't just assume that because I'm actively engaged in something that I consider it to be my ministry. That was something that I really struggled with a couple years ago because I was being told that my vocation at the time was my ministry. And although it most definitely could function that way, it was not the ministry I had any desire to be in. We'll put it that way. I had taken a job that was meant to be a stepping stone, and then was told that that was supposed to be where I was meant to be, and that was where I could make a career. And my response to that, which caused a lot of upheaval internally for several years, was that this is not where I'm meant to be. This was a stepping stone. We knew it was a stepping stone when I was hired. And now you're changing the tune to the dance that I had agreed to participate in. And it was a time where, like, I just saw, as I tried to get out of that, all of these doors that I had believed could have been open for me, to see that they're all closed and that I just couldn't get any traction and I couldn't go anywhere. And I went through the grieving process of, this was what I always thought God was calling me to, like what I was pursuing at the time, about how I'd had so many doors open and now all those doors were closed and I wasn't able to gain any traction. And that was a part of the reason I ended up returning to the secular workforce, was because all of the ministry vocations and outlets that had previously been open, or what should have been open to me, were closing, or a lot of them were not going to pay me a livable wage, or were not going to compensate me appropriately for my years of experience or my training. And I had to go through that grieving process. of being able to let go and being able to freely pursue these new opportunities that God was presenting me with. And I think that's something that people need to understand, is when someone is going through the grieving process of, what they thought was going to be, it's very hard to see the forest for the trees at that point, because you'd had your mind set that this was what life was going to look like, and suddenly it's not what life is going to look like, and you're having to be confronted with it, you're having to accept it, and you're having to be able to learn how to think differently about what you thought was going to be. And I think we need to give people space to be able to do that, and to just be able to listen and to hear, and to not judge someone or tell them they're not having faith, or to tell them that, to speak in definitive terms, like I said earlier, about, oh, well, this is going to happen. Well, no, it might not. And being supportive and being able to help someone be able to work their way through that is the best way that you can really show them love and support. With me having returned to the secular workforce after working for 3 different ministries, I can say that I am actually in a very healthy work environment. It's got its issues. Don't worry. It has its issues. But I'm currently in an environment, though, that allows me to grow, where I'm appreciated, where I'm able to use some of my skill set that would not have been welcomed in other areas. And I would never have had that opportunity if I hadn't have gone through the grieving process prior to deciding to return to the secular workforce. And as a part of that, I am in a much better place spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And I keep moving in and out of the light. Sorry that it keeps going dark on you. But I am now in a better place because I went through that process, and I'm able to now be a better support for someone who is now going through that process themselves. And I hope that if you find this, that you take away from this video, not that it's okay, Finny, not that life is always going to be easy and beautiful, and that we're always going to be happy, but that it's okay to miss the things that you didn't have because you thought that you were going to have them. And it's reasonable with some things to say, like, yeah, like, I'm a part of that generation. We were taught, you go to college, you get the degree so you can have the career that you want, where you can have some fulfillment through your career. Or in growing up in the evangelical church, good church girls, like, we're going to get married, we're going to have a good God-fearing husband, and we're going to have children, and we're going to go to, like, church every Sunday and be super involved in, like, all these different ministries. And sometimes it happens, and I'm very happy for the people who have found that. But sometimes for some of us, and it's becoming more common, that doesn't happen. Now, part of it is because, like, I could go on and on about it. There are many factors to the singleness thing. I'm not going to tackle that here. But for some of us who don't have that, don't make us feel like we're less than we are as we grieve what we thought we were going to have. And just support us and love on us and care for us, and let us figure out what the next steps are and how we can be used in a way that we didn't previously think of. Like having a background in ministry, I never thought that I would eventually end up on YouTube talking about Bible studies or about things that happen in, like, my life, and trying to use it as a platform to share the gospel. And yet here I am. I never would have pursued YouTube if I, one, didn't have encouragement from my parents, but also if I had not been basically depressed at one point about like where I was at with life, because I wasn't where I thought I was going to be. And, you know, being able to be where I currently am is part of the reason, because I worked through a grieving process, and, you know, it's not something that's ever going to be just like done. It's sometimes it still rears its ugly head that I'm not where I thought I was going to be. And sometimes it is still like really, really hard. And sometimes you do want to just kind of cry and scream and get it all out. But at the end of the day, I know that it's okay to grieve something I didn't get to have, and that God can take the frustration, and he can take the anger, and he can take the disappointment that comes with that too. So if you found this and you're going through a season of grieving, because you're somewhere in life you didn't think you were going to be, or you are in a place that you thought you wouldn't end up in, I hope you just find some encouragement that you're not alone out there. A lot of people go through it. A lot of people are currently going through it, and that you're not alone. And sometimes when you're going through that grieving process, like, it is okay to get help. You know, I think one thing we can say about the millennial generation is we have realized the importance of therapy. So if you need help, like, go get help. It's okay. Sometimes that help needs to be professional. Sometimes that help needs to be just a really good friend that you can cry on their shoulder. But if you need help, go get help. And just know that you aren't alone, that it is okay to be in the world and struggling. And I hope that this finds you all, hopefully in good places, and that you are able to get something out of this video. Otherwise, I will see you everybody next time. Bye.